What's going on? It's your boy Baby Paul, aka BpZy. You're now tuning in to NowFactor.com. You dig? NowFactor.com. Yes, sir. Man, I'm blessed to say I come from the era of hardware, and now I've learned the software game. You know, shout out to some of the young engineers and up and coming producers that I've met along the way over the years that inspired me to keep going. You know, some of them, in some cases, I collaborate with some of the ideas that we share. You know, shout out to my dude. His nickname is Rocky, but he goes by Ed OG when he's on the underground scene. You know what I'm saying? He's an engineer producer. He taught me how to use a machine, so I've been working on the machine program. You know, hardware and the software. And you know, I still got some of my vintage sounds from like the MPC 2000, MPC 3000. So I keep a library of some of those classic like drum sounds and, you know, vocal samples or loops that I always felt like I didn't finish or I could have kind of revamped. Sometimes you just got to bring some of that stuff back, you know what I mean? Especially with the way the market is now, it's just a lot of freedom to just experiment, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I try to balance the hardware and software, and then a lot of it is I do stuff organically when I'm in the studio. Sometimes collaborate with new musicians, you know, live instruments, you know, programming stuff on drums and software, and probably sometimes incorporate guitarists, incorporate keyboard players to layer stuff, and then I work with vocalists to write and reference stuff, especially choruses and full songs. So that way, when I place records, it's not just a beat. You know what I mean? It's a marriage of a song idea. You know, like with some up and coming writers and vocalists. So I think that's for me is kind of that growth that I felt was needed for me. You know what I mean? Go from a beat maker to a producer and be able to like put records together, you know, from beginning to end.
What's the last time we talked about one of the biggest mistakes you made in the studio?
Yeah.
And how you fixed it?
Yeah. Actually, that mistake we talked about in the past, it was a record called The Essence by AZ and Nas. I actually, when I shopped the beat, I recorded it and saved it on a DAT. You know, that was a digital audio tape back then. Mm-hmm. And when I submitted it, I recorded the beat with the record volume down. It wasn't recording the audio. So when I realized it, I slowly just turned it up, the record level. So that's why the essence starts where it fades in. You know what I mean? Because once I submitted the beat and they wrote to it and they liked it. So when I went in the studio to lay the record, you know, I was like, oh, I gotta fix the intro. They're like, nah, leave it. That's hot. Leave it like that. So I was like, all right, cool. You know what I mean? But, you know, that's an example of how a mistake ends up making it on the actual record, you know what I mean? Probably another example would be when I actually made LefLaur LeFlah Eshkoshka for Heltah Skeltah OGC back in '96. I did that beat on an SP12, not the 1200, an SP12. So that means I had 5 seconds of sample time, and I had to hook up an external hard drive, you know what I'm saying, just to save sounds. So initially, I made the beat at home, and then when I had to work on it in the studio to lay it down, you know, I didn't bring my drum machine because the sounds are still stored in the drum machine. So I had to actually remake that beat in the studio on the 12. I knew what I did, but it's like sonically, the drums didn't come out the way I did it at home. So it was kind of like, man, I always felt like when I mixed that record, the drums wasn't like my full vision, but the average consumer doesn't know that. They look at it like, oh, this is classic, this is hot. But if they heard like just my beat tape when I made that beat and they could hear the difference, they're probably like, oh, this sounds even hotter. You know what I'm saying? So that's like a little trade secret that I know as far as like the way the drums sound. Like some people thought that was like a drum beat from a soul group called the Whatnots, but I actually sampled a James Brown record, Say It Loud, I'm Black and Proud.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, that's where that snare comes from, on that beat. But now, if you think about it, you listen to it, it may not sound like that. You see what I'm saying? So, interestingly enough, if you heard how I visually sampled and programmed the drums, you'd hear the difference in the sonics. I think it had to do with the way I truncated the snares in the studio. So it just gave it a little bit of a different frequency. So yeah, I did recently get tagged online. Shout out to Team One and Elder Sensei. They were celebrating the anniversary of the That's Them album, the album that me and Sean J. Period. Shout out Sean J. Period. Brooklyn was good. You know, we worked on that album together, and I gotta give it up to Sean J. because, interestingly enough, it was an example of the camaraderie amongst hip hop producers back then. Because he introduced me to Artifacts, which in turn got me the opportunity to produce the Ultimate, which is one of the singles on the album. And I introduced him to the Boot Camp, which is how he got on the Heltah Skeltah album. You know what I'm saying? If you notice, Sean J. Period is on the Heltah Skeltah album as well, on the Nocturnal album. It was kind of one of those things where we just showed each other love and respect and just passed each other work. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I miss. I mean, today it's so saturated and competitive. Everybody's fighting for their piece of the pie in the game. And people aren't necessarily working on albums and saying, yo, I'm working on this album, come through, give this artist some records, I'm always one to do that. Like, I have no ego when it comes to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love enveloping other producers to collaborate with me or give them an opportunity to work. You know what I mean? If anybody's reached the credits on some of my last works, you know, maybe even the last 5 to 8 years, they'll notice I have a couple co-producers on it. That's because I like to share the wealth. The original version was me. The remix was Showbiz. And the song also got licensed on a High School High movie soundtrack by Big Beat Atlantic. It was a John Lovitz movie, comedian John Lovitz from Saturday Night Live. And it's interesting because that album, the soundtrack went gold. And I got the song placed, well, I shouldn't say I got, but the song got placed in the movie. There's a scene in the movie. So I still get publishing off of that. You know what I'm saying? So I got a gold record and consistent publishing because it's in the movie. You know what I mean? On top of being on Artifacts album. So that's what's up.
Yeah.
One more time. Shout out to the fans, the support from day one. I appreciate y'all from the Heltah Skeltah, Boot Camp, Black Moon, Smith & Wesson era to now. You know, I appreciate all the love online. People from all over the world, overseas, hit me up, appreciating those records, you know, tagging me about it online on Instagram, everything. So that's what's up, man. That's really dope.